Welcome to the KDI Wealth Alchemist podcast for another episode. I'm Shane Keith and I'll be hosting today with our guest Nylene Ellingson. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
But most of today, just to kind of give you a little bit of a preview of what we're going to discuss, is Medicare, a little bit into private insurance, but Nylene is the owner of Senior Insurance Specialist. How long have you been in the business?
I've been in the business about 10 years.
10 years. Learned a lot?
An awful lot. I mean, I feel like if anybody says they know it all, they're fooling themselves. But I've learned a lot and I love what I do.
With Medicare, it's pretty simple concept, right?
Yeah.
Not a lot of complexities to it.
Oh, there's a lot of complexities to it. Oh my goodness.
What would you say some of the tips or tricks or best practices for someone that's approaching maybe the age of 65?
Best practice would be to find an independent broker. So you don't call up a company and ask to talk to someone because you're going to hear about that company. Main thing you want to do is when you're either turning 65 or looking at retiring or whatever, you just have questions, talk to someone who represents a lot of companies and plans, and they don't have a bias what you pick, but they know them inside and out, and then they can guide you, help you look at your options and plans that take your doctors, or just all the different complexities of Medicare. There's a lot.
You bring up a great point there, and again, being an independent advisor, so I can understand the importance of finding someone that's independent that ultimately is looking at the entire marketplace, at every option that you have available. Something that comes up all the time in client meetings that we're talking to, if we get into the Medicare discussion, is, hey, should it be a supplement or an advantage plan? And I would say that a lot of the times with the advantage plans, it's a love or hate relationship. Do you want to take a dive into when you look at the two, where are you usually drawing a contrast?
My job, whenever somebody meets with me, I sit down and I explain the parts of Medicare. Unless somebody's been on a long time and doesn't want to cover that, but I usually explain how Medicare works, because if they're just leaving employer coverage or turning 65, you've been bombarded by mail, and even if you've done a lot of research on YouTube or whatever, I like to simplify it. So I explain what Part A is like, which is hospital insurance, Part B, which is their medical, Part D, which is drugs, Part C, which is advantage, and supplements. And the first thing I tell people is, I'm so excited for you because the best part of turning 65 or retiring is your health insurance options. You don't have a bad option with Medicare. Supplements are fantastic. Advantage plans are fantastic. They work very differently. So I try to contrast the differences and then let people choose what sounds like a good fit for their life.
Just before we hopped in here, we were talking and going through some of the stuff we were going to chat about today. You had mentioned some big changes last year to prescription plans, but to Medicare in general.
Yes.
So share a little bit about that.
You bet. So this year, the Inflation Reduction Act has been doing some things over the last few years, making some different changes. One of the things they changed in past years that was big was capping insulin at $35 on all plans, covering Part D would cover things like shingles shots, which they didn't used to. And so there's been some different changes from the Inflation Reduction Act. The change that took place for 2025 around drugs, there was huge changes. So the first one is people's max out of pocket dropped from $8,000 to $2,000. So that was huge. Sometimes I meet with people and they have some tier 4 or tier 5 specialty drugs and they can't retire because what they would cost when they would get into the donut hole. Anybody who's been on Medicare and had expensive drugs, you're familiar with this. They would get into a portion of drug coverage where they had to pay 25% of that drug until they've maxed out at $8,000. And so some people were forced to keep working just because of the drugs they were taking. They couldn't afford them on Medicare. That's totally different now because no one can pay more than $2,000 for their drugs. And another huge change that they did was they made a Medicare prescription payment plan known as the M3P plan. So you reach out to whatever plan you're on, whether it's a Part D standalone or an Advantage plan, and what they will do is they'll take your estimated costs, including your deductible if you have one, and they will average it into 12 payments. So nobody has to come up with the first $590 deductible and their expensive drug costs in January. I get calls all the time where somebody's shocked and, oh my gosh, it was $800 this month. Well, the good thing is, by the end of the year, they're probably paying nothing for their drugs. But if you'd rather average it, that's something that was brand new for 2025 and really helps people on a fixed income.
That's a great change to the, so I sign up, I'm on Medicare, a year comes around, what should I be thinking about when it comes time for renewal?
So anytime with any plan, people will get what's called their annual notice of change. They usually send those out around the end of September. And that is important to look at because it will show you in a column anything from 2025 and then what 2026 will look like. We'll have any negative or positive change. So people should look at that, and if anything looks less desirable and they want to look at options, then they should reach out to their broker and review, because there are over 60 Advantage plans, there are 12 drug plans. They don't cover everything equally. And so between October 15th and December 7th is the time that you can see if there's a better option for you.
With that in mind, and as they start to make adjustments to different plans on a year-by-year basis, if someone is very specific about, yeah, I want these doctors, these are my doctors, or someone's very specific, these specific drugs I have to have covered in my plan, how do you customize a solution to what their needs are?
Oh, good question. So whenever I sit down and go over the types of coverage that are available, so let's take a step back a little bit. If someone chooses a Medicare supplement, sometimes these terms can be confusing, but a supplement to Medicare is purchasing private insurance. It's not part of Medicare at all. It's not funded by Medicare. It's just every company offers a Medicare supplement. Aflac, Bankers Life, Mutual of Omaha, AARP. All of the companies, a supplement covers the exact same things. If you're on a Plan G, you're going to pay a premium. You're going to pay a tiny deductible of $257 this year and then have no other medical costs. Medicare would pay $80, your supplement picks up $20. On a supplement plan, you don't have to worry about doctor networks. You can see any doctor in the country that accepts Medicare, which is most everybody. I've been doing this 10 years, and I think I've met somebody 2 times that saw a doctor that didn't take Medicare. And they were for very specific surgeries that they found a doctor that didn't accept Medicare. But you can go to Mayo Clinic if you've already been seen there. So supplements, very flexible. You're going to pay that premium every month, your little deductible, no networks. But you do need to add drug coverage when you have a supplement. And so you want to look at your drugs and which of the 12 options covers your drugs at the lowest cost. It's really not as critical as it was in past years when you had an $8,000 cap.
Sure.
But there are drug plans that range from zero cost each month up to over $150. And most of the time, the zero cost plan works as good as the $150.
Right before we came in here, you mentioned something. If you're considering supplements or looking for different supplement coverages, that sometimes the lowest premium on the website may not be the best option or may have a catch to it. So can you share a little bit about that, or at least just something as a good rule of thumb?
Yeah, a good rule of thumb is like when there are sites that you can go to, like as a broker, I can look up every supplemental plan and it will list them from the lowest cost to the highest cost. But cost is important. Nobody wants to pay more than they need to, but you want a reputable company that's been around a while. Now, the one nice thing is if you choose a no-name company, if they go out of business, you have a guarantee issue to get on any other plan. So it's not like you're stuck with no good option. Even if you're in the middle of cancer, if your Aflac stopped selling Medicare supplements, you can switch to something else, guaranteed. But you want to look at a company that has a lot of people on the plan because they're not funded by Medicare, so all of your bills are paid by premium dollars. So do you want to be on a plan where they have 1,600 lives insured in the nation or 3 million?
Right.
When you're on a plan with more people, chances are your rates are going to be more stable. But speaking of rates, I've done this for 10 years, and in the past, rate increases looked anywhere from 3 to 9%. Were pretty typical among companies. And this year we are seeing upwards of 20% increases. And that's even with the big companies like United Healthcare, AARP. So really big increases compared to previous years. And with a supplement, you can shop any month of the year you want. It's not subject to enrollment periods. So like home and auto insurance, if your premiums have been climbing over several years and you want to talk with a broker, I could help you look up which companies have a better rate and see if you can qualify to make a change. They typically look back about 2 years at your health history, and they're big things like cancer, stroke, heart attack, COPD, things like that.
Gotcha. Let's say someone signs up, age 65, onto a plan, and then immediately believe that either, let's just say they either take a phone call and someone calls them, they sign up, but they immediately believe that they made the wrong decision or they're on the wrong plan. What are their options, if any?
Good question. So I just had this. I have a gentleman, and he's in the middle of cancer treatment, and somebody enrolled him on a drug plan, and he has nothing but original Medicare. So he used his what's called initial enrollment period. You have a big 7-month window to choose any type of plan, a drug plan, an advantage plan. Since he enrolled on a drug plan, that was his one-time initial enrollment.
Gotcha.
And now he doesn't have another reason to change right now. And for his protection, he would like to be on an advantage or a supplement. Now, he can add a supplement because it's not Medicare, so he is going to start a supplement for the beginning of the year. Just since this year, he has spent a few thousand in medical costs on his 20% that Medicare didn't cover, whereas if he was on a supplement, he would have only spent the premium he's paying and $257 deductible. So huge savings. And if he was on an advantage plan, he'd have no deductible, no premium, and just co-pays for what he's been doing. Either one is really great, but it just depends. There's a lot of different special election periods and times. The typical enrollment times is when you're leaving employer coverage. You can always start a Medicare plan. Anytime you want to leave your employer coverage, that's a special election. Anytime you move out of your county to another area, you can make a change. Every annual enrollment, which is October 15th to December 7th, we know because it's all over TV.
Yes.
Everybody can make a change. And then another typical one is called open enrollment. It's not allowed to be advertised, but it's January 1st through the end of March for people who are on advantage plans only. So if someone wasn't happy with their advantage plan or maybe heard about another plan that sounded more desirable, they can make a change to another plan or make a change to a supplement plan.
Speaking of, you mentioned county and moving between counties. How important it is to which county you're in and what kind of plans available to you?
They differ quite a bit. Arizona has really grown over the years to where most of the counties have several options. Obviously, Maricopa has the most options. When I first started working with KDI, I met Kevin Dick and Payson, Arizona at an event at the casino.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was only one advantage plan offered, and it was $160 a month, which is not good.
No.
More than most people would have paid on a supplement where you don't have copays. So the tricky part was, even though that was the only option, a lot of people are on Medicare before they're 65 because of disability or different reasons, mostly disability, and they can't have a supplement till they're 65. But they can have an advantage plan when they're on Medicare, even if they're 40. And so that was tricky, but in the last few years, there are now many, like 25 plan options with zero premium and things like that. So most of the counties have several options, but it does differ quite a bit. I've had clients in California where their county has 2 options for advantage, and they're less than desirable, and so you absolutely want to supplement. But when you live in a competitive county, I have so many people that sit down and are completely sure they want to supplement. And then after they look at the options, they totally change their mind and want like a PPO advantage plan. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So it's one of the things I tell people is let's go over it, because you may think you know what you want, but you might not have all of the information. And there's never any pressure from me one way or another. I get paid an equal commission no matter what plan someone chooses. And so I just like to guide people. One of the reasons a lot of people like advantage plans, it's been growing and it's actually more popular than supplements now, is because there's no premium. They all have a max out of pocket, but very few people ever hit it. They have no cost for lab work and primary care or preventative, but they all come with reasonable co-pays. So like here in Maricopa County, A copay for an outpatient surgery could range anywhere from $75 to about $300, depending on the plan you're on. But that's reasonable, and it all goes toward a max out-of-pocket. On HMOs, the max out-of-pocket is as low as $2,300. On PPOs, more like $5,000. But on all of these plans, the reason they call them Advantage is you don't pay deductibles for Part A or B, and you have things that Medicare doesn't cover, like routine vision, dental, and hearing. So again, in Maricopa County, your dental could range from just free cleanings all the way up to $4,000 in free dental with no waiting periods. There are some companies that pay implants, most of them don't, but really good dental, good vision, and eyewear coverage, and just different things like that. And so most of my clients that are 65 or even 40, they're
Right.
using dental and vision on a
Yeah.
regular basis. And so it's something that appeals to a lot of people, and then there's no premium. So you just pay as you use it, and you have a cap to what you could hit in a year that's really reasonable.
When someone reaches out to you for the first time, and ultimately it's a sit-down conversation, what does that look like? How do you ultimately approach it from a process perspective to get to know them?
Oh, you bet. So lots of different ways. It's up to whoever reaches out to me. So I love meeting with people in person. I love building rapport and getting to know people. But a lot of my clients choose to do a virtual visit. So I can do a Zoom or a screen share where they click on a link. And it works really good if they live a far distance away or in another state and they want to use me as a broker. But otherwise, I love to meet people in person, even if I drive a bit to them. So it's just whatever they prefer.
In regards to dental, and you brought up, in regards to dental, you brought it up with the Advantage plans. Can you just provide a little bit more context on how that differs with the supplements versus the Advantage plans?
Yes. So supplements pick up the 20% that Medicare doesn't. So they're only paying what Medicare does, and Medicare does not cover routine vision, dental, or hearing. So those are added expenses when someone goes the supplement route. So I can always help sell them a vision or dental plan. So I worked a lot of years in dental. But the best plans I've seen range anywhere from $30 to about $56 per person. And they're all going to have a waiting period on major work unless you're coming off of another dental plan. So sometimes people, you're paying that monthly premium, you're getting your free cleanings, and you don't even have coverage on something, or very little coverage. There are some plans that give you some coverage the first year, but it's like 10 to 25%. So you can purchase a dental plan, but those dental plans do not compare to what Advantage plans offer. There's so many Advantage plans that offer a few thousand in free dental, in or out of network. Some of the plans, like I said, one of the companies will pay for implants, but if you need a crown, a root canal, it's first dollar coverage with no waiting period. Again, it's something to look at. The plans differ a lot. Some of them will pay out a network dentist. Some you have to choose from the network that they provide. Just a lot of things to look at. Vision is another important one. All of the plans give a free eye exam on the Advantage plans, and then anywhere from like usually $100 to $500 in eyewear allowance.
Okay. You mentioned specific providers earlier and from an insurance perspective, you can look them up online to see what their ratings are. Can you share a little bit about that from state to state, and maybe if you're not checking out, like what's their or they have a 5-star rating or do they have a 4-star rating?
Yes. When you go to Medicare.gov, you can see a lot of information about drug plans and Advantage plans offered in your area. And one of the important things to look at is the star rating. Stars are really hard to keep high. There's so many things that go into it about customer service, about patient care. If somebody has a 3.5 to 4.5 star rating, it's a pretty good plan. But below 3.5, you probably could find better. Sometimes I hear from doctors or from clients, well, I've heard Advantage plans are horrible, or I've heard you can't see the doctors you want. You just need to work with a good broker, because when there are 63 options in your county and multiple plans, I work with 10 companies and over 100 Medicare plans. That's not counting the supplement companies. They're not all equal. There are some companies that have really competitive 5-star plans in California, and they are 2.5 in Arizona because their doctor network is very limiting. So yeah, if somebody got on one of those plans and the broker didn't look doctors up, they might have a very hard time finding a specialist that took it. But if you stick with the big companies that you're familiar with hearing, ones like United Healthcare, Aetna, Humana, Cigna, they have really well-rated plans. They have large networks. Many of them, even on their HMO plans, you don't need referrals for specialists, and they have national doctor networks, meaning if you're spending 6 months in Vermont, you can see doctors and specialists there or have a surgery. It isn't limited to emergency. There are other plans where you're covered in your area and it's only emergency out of the state. So there are so many options. And then PPO just means you can choose to go out of your network. Usually not necessary with these big companies, but sometimes people just prefer to have a PPO plan. And they're, again, zero cost and wonderful plans. It's never too early to sit down and look at options with a broker. I have people, they're very meticulous, they want to know what's coming. It might be a year out before they turn 65, but they want to sit down and get an idea of what it looks like. We can do that. But when it comes to when you can apply, you can't apply for Medicare until the 3rd month before your birth month. So that's when you can apply, and you have a big 7-month open window to choose anything. Now that's if you know you want to go on Medicare. If you're working, well, so let's take it back. If you know you want to go on Medicare, then you reach out. I guide people. I send them an email that has a link in there that takes them straight to the Social Security application for Medicare. And you fill that out. It takes about 2 weeks. They send you that red, white, and blue Medicare card. And then once you have that number, you can get on any additional coverage, like your drug plan or an Advantage plan or a supplement. So that starts the 3rd month before. If you're already drawing Social Security benefits, you don't have to apply. Your card is going to show up 3 months before your birth month in the mail. But if you're not on Social Security benefits yet, that's when you need to apply. So that's when you should apply. A lot of people reach out to me and have questions because they have a great work plan, or maybe they're going to keep working till their wife turns 65 or whatever, and they're really worried because they're getting told they're going to incur penalties if they don't start Medicare. Well, that's not entirely true. So the truth about penalties is if you are working and you have a work plan, you can always check with your HR department, but typically your work plan is considered credible coverage with Medicare. That changes the moment you retire. I see some really unfortunate situations where people have a great work plan, they can keep it after they retire, and it didn't go up a lot in price, and so they're very happy with their work plan. But what they were unaware of is the moment they stopped working, that plan that was considered credible became uncredible insurance, which is the silliest thing ever, right?
Right.
But now they start to incur penalties for not taking Medicare Part B. Just always reach out and check. I would say the majority of times what Medicare offers outshines retirement plans. I see it all day long with ASRS or other types of retirement insurance. It's unusual for me to see a plan that is actually better than what they could do through Medicare. So it's good to sit down, look at the options. You're either going to feel really good to stay on what you already have, or you're going to find that there's a better option. I tell people that all the time. Never hurts to look because I'm not pushy. You don't want somebody who's making you feel pressure to make a change. But so penalties only happen once you're retired, or if you choose not to get on Medicare when you have no other insurance, then you are going to incur a penalty, which is 10% of what Part B costs that year for every 12 months you go without it. And then the drug penalty is a lot smaller. They're going to charge you a percentage of what the average drug plan is in the nation. So typically 30 cents every month, but it can build. I see people with a 10 to 20 year drug penalty, and now that's $50, $77 a month. So those are some of the things. But if you're working, you're not penalized. You can take Part B or add Medicare whenever you're looking at retiring, or anytime you want to switch from your work plan to Medicare. You don't have to wait till you retire at all.
Even if our clients are considering going on COBRA for a period of time, or even though they're Medicare age eligible.
Oh, they should definitely check their options first, because COBRA is typically pretty pricey, and Medicare it really is lovely. Now, let's talk about this. Most people in America pay the base rate for Part B. Part A is typically covered up with no premium because people have worked enough or their spouse has worked enough. They've worked 40 quarters. And so Part A, the hospital insurance, has no cost. But Part B, which is the medical coverage, that's the one with a monthly premium. That if you have a good work plan, don't start it yet. You don't need to double up. But most people pay $185 for that, and that means their income as an individual is below $106,000 a year, or as combined $212,000. If it's above that, then there are different income brackets, and you're gonna pay more for Part B. And the max you can pay, like when you're making $750,000 plus or so, is $628 for Part B. And then if you're above that base rate, that $106,000 as an individual, you'll also get charged an extra tax for Part D. I can go over with people what that looks like, but it's called an IRMA tax, income related modified adjustment amount.
Yes.
There we go.
It comes up a lot in our business and what we do, and because Medicare premiums can be adjusted by a lot of what we do. So it's all calculated based on MAGI, modified adjusted gross income,
Yes.
which includes tax-free interest. So we have lots of clients with municipals and different types of bonds that'll pay tax-free interest. So they get no federal tax or no state tax, but it feeds through right to their Medicare premiums. So even though their actual income is under, either their muni interest or tax-free interest that they earn from their investments will actually still bump their Medicare premiums. So we are very familiar with IRMA in this space.
And I'm so glad you are, since you're advising them
Yes.
on all of those things. One of the things to know about that is when someone's first applying, Social Security bases their IRMA off 2 years ago tax return. If someone knows that 2 years ago tax return is not what their current income is, all they have to do is appeal to Social Security to have them, like maybe they're retiring and they're like, no, what I made 2 years ago is not going to be my income now that I'm on Medicare. They'll adjust it to what it should be. But otherwise, say you sell a house and you have a really big bump, so 1 year your tax is going to show way higher, well, for 1 year you're going to have an IRMA tax. But then the next year it will drop
Just
off
that.
if your income is down at a lower bracket. Something to be aware of. It's not a forever thing, it's just based off your tax returns.
That's come up a lot, actually, when our clients are set to retire. All of a sudden, their income is changing drastically from 1 year to the next. And it's like, hey, our Medicare premiums are being based off of when we were working, and it's no longer the case. So we've used that a couple of different times. And it's absolutely important to say, hey, let's consider this, because it could drop, at least save you 12 months of premiums you shouldn't be paying.
Absolutely. It can be huge,
Yeah.
and there's no need to pay that if that's not what it looks like moving forward.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about being on Social Security already, and then you turn the age of 65. You mentioned, hey, if you're already on Social Security at the age of 65, you're going to get your card in the mail. What should be the next steps from there?
So their card's going to show up 3 months before they turn 65, and they should reach out to a broker, an independent broker. And there's a new rule with Medicare, this was in the last year or two, where anytime you speak with someone, even if it's a call center, which I would avoid at all costs,
Yeah.
anytime you speak with someone who's licensed to help you with a plan, they have to tell you how many companies and plans they represent. So I wouldn't recommend speaking with someone who says, I represent 2 companies and 10 Medicare plans. I represent 10 companies and over 100 Medicare plans. And so they're supposed to be telling you that. You'd have a good idea of how diverse they are if they're doing their job right and actually doing that disclaimer we're supposed to say. So yeah, just checking with people how many companies they represent. Sometimes I met a lady and she said, oh, are you a broker? And I said, yes. And she goes, oh, that's exactly what I don't want. And I think she just had this big false notion, because working with a broker where this is my career, just like your career is to guide people, you're not going to have a good business if they're not happy with your service. I've been doing this every year to represent Medicare plans. We test on every single company and plans to be able to represent them. It is yearly testing for every company we represent. So I can't just say I represent a company if I didn't certify with them again and test. There are some people who only sell supplement plans because they're not Medicare. You don't have to do any yearly testing. It's private insurance, you can sell it. And so sometimes people only do that, and sometimes people only push Advantage plans. You don't want to meet with a broker that's either way. You want to meet with someone who really shows you your options and lets you choose what fits. And you want to make sure that person is asking you about the doctors and specialists you see and your medications. So there's no surprises that plan isn't going to work well for you.
Right. Adding on to that, one of the things that is most important to us when it comes down to taking care of a client is service. And so I've come across a lot of different individuals that call themselves professionals that work in the insurance space, that they sell the plan and that's the last you ever hear from them, or you ever get in contact with them. We've worked together for at least going on probably 7 years now, and every time we've had a client that we've sent your way, if a question comes up, we tell them call. And their service model, you're always getting back to them. So might be a little bit of have a plug for you, but our experience with you has been rather flawless thus far, and the way that you've taken care of the clients we've sent your way. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that so much. I try. I am not perfect, and there are certain times of the year, especially in enrollment period, where my getting back to people is a little more delayed than normal. But typically, I try to return people's calls really fast. I love working with you guys too. I have never had unhappy clients. They love working with you. I love it when I get questions. Sometimes I just am able to answer people's questions and give them that peace of mind that they don't need to look till they're going to retire in a few years. Answer all their questions about penalties or do I have to this or that, different things they've heard from friends and family members. Everybody is well-intentioned, but we don't always get accurate information. There is never any cost for my help. I love helping people. Like I said, I used to be a dental hygienist and I loved that field, but I like guiding people with Medicare because we don't know what we don't know. The other day, I had a pit in my stomach because I got a phone call from someone. He was disabled about 2 years ago. He was hit on a motorcycle. And he, at the time, now he had no job, and somebody at the hospital helped him get on financial aid, so on access. And then when he got disability insurance, it kicked him off access. Well, here's where the tragic part was. Somebody told him you can't have insurance anymore, but in 2 years you can be on Medicare. So this gentleman thought he could not have a plan at the time when his medical bills were the highest. So for a little portion, Access paid it. And then he has lost his house. He's had to move into a trailer with his mom. He's in his 50s. And the whole time, he absolutely could have and should have had a major medical plan that had a max out of pocket, but he was advised inaccurately. Mm-hmm. And so it just made me so sad, and there's nothing I can go back to the last 2 years and do, but moving forward, I could help him. And that's what I love to do. I love guiding people to finding a plan that meets their needs and then being there for them, because I hear it all the time too. And it's so surprising because in our field, it is commission-based. I don't get a salary. Right. I get paid by each happy person that uses me as a broker. And so I hear it all the time. I can't get a hold of the person that enrolled me. They won't return my calls. Mm-hmm. Well, then look for a new broker. Right. But it just surprises me that people won't call their clients back, but I hear it a lot. And yeah, my sister and I, we have an agency, Senior Insurance Specialists, and we've been doing this for a decade. We work with a lot of brokers. We love what we do. And so if anybody listening to this has friends or family that need some guidance or have some questions, you're welcome to call us. Like I said, there's no charge. You don't have to be one of our clients to benefit from our help.
And what I would share is that Nylene, I'm probably going on 4 years now, every year as we approach open enrollment, which would be right around September, October, we have Nylene on a webinar. And so she'll be on a webinar again this year. Most of it is going to be at a high level, explaining the plans, but not going into detail on any one specific plan. But of course, you can reach out to us or reach out to Nylene directly for her information to get in contact with her. But that'll be likely September, later this year, maybe October. We'll have her on a webinar. Nylene, thank you. Thank you for your time and thank you for coming in today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.